Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of Two Crones with a Mic. We're so happy you're here. Of course, we're always happy to have all of you listen, tune in, watch us, like and subscribe, of course. But yeah, we have a whole bunch of things to talk about today. And before we get into it, we'll have the beautiful Indira do her wonderful, wonderful grounding meditation or whatever she comes up with from spirit today.
Whatever spirit comes up with through
Right.
me. That's
Yes.
where we are. Yeah, so good to be here today. Let us just, if it is safe for you, just take that moment to close down or lower your eyes, whatever is most comfortable, and just be in this moment where you're disconnected from the outer world for just a few moments, just a few breaths. Check in with your body, see where maybe you're slouching or there's some tension. Breathing into that spot, leaving behind any concerns of yesterday or worries about tomorrow. Just moving into this precious present. Coming in with an open heart and an open mind, and recognizing that if our stories and our experiences are sounding familiar, it's because we're deeply connected to each other. We're connected by breath. We're connected by our hearts and our minds. We're connected by our souls, and we're connected by this life that exists well outside of the physical body. We stay connected to our breath the whole time, breathing deeply, breathing intentionally. Even after you stop listening to the podcast, remember to return to your breath in each and every moment. And now we move into the space of the podcast with open hearts, open minds, and ready to move forward. And so it is.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, just before we came on, we kind of decided, or we talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about. And actually, we couldn't figure it quite out because there's so many things that, need to be said. And we couldn't really decide on one thing. But so we decided we'll just go for it and see what Spirit wants us to talk about. And I guess this episode is titled Rewriting Your Story. And I don't know. Um, Maybe I don't know enough about that, but what it means for me is like you're rewriting your story maybe to heal from trauma. Did I get this right? Or how would we define
Well, I
rewriting
think
our story?
yeah, so that's a great question. The book that I got it from, I really do love this book. It's called Warrior Goddess Training by Heather Ash Amara. And she was trained by Don Miguel Ruiz, who's the writer of the Four Agreements, and it's a whole series of things. But what she talks about is releasing your old stories. As women, we are filled to the brim with stories, woven by learned beliefs and agreements of what it means to be a female, that keep us tied to past old beliefs and keep us from our true potential. Do you ever feel that you're weighed down by your past and buried under layers of self doubts, fears, and confusion? When I first started apprenticing with Don Miguel Ruiz and working with the Toltec teachings, I felt like a suitcase that was overstuffed with all the ideas of who I thought I should be. I might have that same suitcase. Anybody
Same
else?
suitcase. I think we all have a suitcase or a bag or something.
Who we think we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so she says, what my entire inside world was crowded and heavy. I knew I wanted to lighten my load. But at first I didn't know how to change. I just knew that I wanted to. As I learned to hold myself in a container of compassionate awareness and refrain from judging, I began to notice the impact my words had on my relationship to myself. One day, as I was sharing the story of my life with a new friend, I had an epiphany. I realized that my story was not a factual collection of words describing my life. My story was a heavy anchor I was dragging behind me while trying to catch the wind in my sails. And so then she began to tell this story about how she was traumatized as a child by how often her family moved. Her family was military. They moved a lot. She went to 8 different schools and lived in 4 different countries by the time she was 16. They moved every 2 years or so, and she'd start off each year feeling painfully shy, disconnected, and alone. By the second year, I would have made friends and found my groove, and then we'd move again, and the cycle would start over. Because of the many times they moved away from friends or they moved away because of their parents' jobs, I have a hard time connecting with people intimately, and I'm afraid of being abandoned. Each time I told my story, I felt sorry for myself, wouldn't you?
Hmm.
And on that new day with my or on that day with my new friend, I had the awareness to lovingly release my past frame of perception. So it's less about rewriting the story, but rewriting from the frame of perception and rewrite it as an adventure rather than a disaster. And so she said, I was blessed as a child with an adventurous family. We moved every 2 years and traveled around the world every summer. I spent most of my childhood going to great international schools. And by the time I was 16, my family had visited or lived in 20 different countries. Because of the many times we moved and traveled, I learned to be incredibly flexible and to deeply love the diversity and creativity of humans. My childhood experiences helped me to relate to many different perspectives, to make friends easily, and to celebrate change. And each time I told this new story, I felt a sense of adventure, and lots of gratitude. Now, the important question is, which story is true?
That is a
And
good question.
right? And this is something you and I talked about
Yeah.
yesterday when I was here. Shout out to
Mhm.
Brian. Shout out to Brian.
Brian, we
Brian
told you we would poke you.
Brian got his certificate as a level 1 Akashic Records reader from Bettina
Woohoo!
yesterday.
Woohoo, Brian.
Uh,
You will go out and do great things. We all know it.
Absolutely. But one of the things that we talked about is we live in a both and world. Both stories are true.
Mhm.
And even though both stories are true, they're true for Heather Ash, but they're not necessarily the actual truth of what happened because when they talk about you see an accident, people witness an
Yeah,
accident. There's every single person's perspective of what happened, and there's what actually happened.
correct.
You have an interaction. You and I have an interaction. There's your perception, my perception, and then there's the truth in the center.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so even stories, our stories that we tell are that way. And so, you and I have been talking about,
Mhm.
first of all, let's talk about change agents for a minute, shall we?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
because
I
that,
would like to add something to that. I just had a thought about you, actually.
okay.
But go
So
for it. Go for it.
that, so, um, when I started these studies, this work, I don't even remember how I learned about at least 3 different types of healers. And these not aren't necessarily healers um, that put their hands on people.
Mhm.
So one of one type of healer is called a connector, and a connector is someone who, through what seems like miracle, brings 2 seemingly unrelated people together, and they they have a reason to be together. So 8 years ago, a friend of mine who I view very much as a connector, um, brought me in to do a Mary Kay makeover because I was a Mary Kay consultant at the time on her. She introduced me to her neighbor who had popped over for something, and the next thing you know, 5 years later, that's my roommate. I've been living with her for 5 years. We became friends, and we've been supporting each other for 5 years. And so those are connectors. And then there is something that's very, very rare known as the pain eaters. And when I talk about a pain eater, I do not mean Hollywood's version of pain eating. These
Mhm.
are people who do have the ability to absorb and transmute the actual pain of others. I've experienced 2 in my life, It is a terrifying thing for them to experience. Yet, if someone is willing to learn how to manage it and control it, they could do great things in this world. Absolutely great things. And then there's change agents, or the phrase that that I was taught was impetus of change, also known as a change agent. And they are people who have the so connectors, pain eaters, and impetus of change. We all have a vibration of whatever it is that is ours.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is change.
Mm-hmm.
I am an impetus of change, and I have the vibration of change. And people either love me or they hate me. Like literally, people, and sometimes they love me and then they hate me because, and I can't help it. I can't help it. It's my vibration. And but when people are around me, they start to think about all the ways that they could change their lives. And it's I'm not talking to them about change. I'm just sitting there having a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And but they begin to, oh, I could go do this and I could do that. And the next thing you know, they're like off and running. But there's those people who don't like to change that absolutely hate me. They hate my presence and they don't know why. They just know that they don't like being around my energy.
Hmm.
And it's because they're super comfortable in their life and they don't want to change, even though my presence in their life is to be that impetus of change. They don't want to do it. They're in resistance. And so you and I were talking about this the other day, and you were like, "Yeah, ever since you came into my life, ugh, my life has not been the same." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I said to you, "Imagine being me."
Yeah.
Because I have the vibration of change. I am constantly changing. The only constant in my life is changing. And so when I show up here and I'm like, and then you can do this and you can do this and you do this, I don't mean to be a like a life coach. It's my vibration.
It's your vibration, yeah.
So what was the thought you had?
Oh my God. Okay, well, let me start at the beginning. Okay, first of all, I don't know if I ever said that on a podcast, but yes, you said it. Ever since you and I started to become closer or closer friends, and you come over here to my house and we discuss stuff, we discuss ideas and the podcast, it's like it has been a rough ride, and just today, but I love you. I do love you. Okay. So, and
I love you too.
I
And I'm
am
sorry.
I'm totally open to change. So I'm totally open to that. But the funny thing is, and I'm just coming out of a really, really tough week. And you know that because we talked. You called me a few times this week and we talked about all the stuff that's going on. I had a rough week. Monday, I went to work, but I was hardly able to function. I was fatigued and exhausted, and I couldn't figure out why. And it's almost like my whole body felt achy, but not like when you're sick, achy. It's just I felt like I wanted to zip open my skin and just wanted to get out of my skin. It's almost like a minor anxiety, not attack, but a little
Mhm.
bit of that. It's hard to describe. And Tuesday I felt better. And then Wednesday I actually had to call into work because I just could not. I was so weak and had no strength. And I was feeling really, really bad. And it's really I feel like I'm growing, but it's like my spiritual growth, and stuff like this starts happening ever since you came into my life. But I just need to know how to deal with it. And we talked about that on Saturday. But I also want to say it is such a difficult feeling or emotion to live like this. So if you have this all the time, I really I don't know how you do it. But by Thursday, I was literally on my living room floor with my I had YouTube on, I think, and I had some meditation music going, like a whole body healing frequency, and I had crystals all over my body. I'm like, something's going to have to work, okay? Because this is awful. I can't do this. I mean, all the time. And by Friday, I was like a new person. I'm like, whoa, that was rough, but I
Oh,
came out of
that's
it.
sweet.
I mean, and today I still think about this whole week, and today, Spirit gave me an image. So You know how when people get married, they get into a car and they have those cans in the back?
Yes.
And I feel like Indira is the car that's like full speed, and I'm one of those cans in the back, and I'm just getting dragged along and banged up. And it's like I'm trying to survive over here, okay? And so, I mean, I love you. I really, I'm glad you're in my life, but I'm tired of being the can, okay? We need to figure something out. And so we decided when she comes over Saturday, we had Brian over here, of course, and she was also helping Brian. Thank you for that. And so we decided in the evening she'll do a reading for me, and so we'll figure out how I can better manage all of this. And the reading was very, very good. Of course, Indira is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful reader. And I don't know if I'm allowed to mention that, but
Uh-huh. Sure.
if you remember, if you guys remember, we had Christy Peterson on a couple of weeks ago or months ago, and she channeled an alien named Ramadir. And a lot of things have happened since. And now the wonderful, wonderful Indira is channeling an alien as well. And yesterday, she brought him out for me. And those messages were profound and they were spot on. And gosh, I feel like a new person. So hopefully it'll last for a while before the next can's coming in. But thank you for that. And so
Oh,
that's what's been going on with me. I'm going through a lot of change. And when we talked about rewriting my story, I told her just today that there's a lot going on, and maybe right now is not the time for me to rewrite some of the things that kind of traumatized me in my life. Maybe I'm not at the point at the moment, maybe in the future. But if you're not willing or if you can't rewrite your story, it's okay. Maybe you're just comfortable where you're at right now because that's where I'm at, you
yes.
know?
I cannot get that image out of my head.
The
And
can.
and yeah, and somehow I got muted. I don't know if you guys heard me laughing. I was laughing hysterically very loudly. I had to move away from the mic. I think the mic muted me because I got too loud. The Holy Spirit was like, "They don't need to hear that cackle." That was so funny and so freaking accurate.
It's
Like, it
true.
really is, and I think my husband would agree,
Yeah.
hands down, that this is what it's like to be married to me. And this is I yeah, and so for me, the image is spirit is driving the car and I'm the can, you
Okay.
know? Like, that is it. And this is I I don't get to settle in for longer than about a week or 2,
Wow.
and then something else has to change, and then
Hmm.
something else has to change, and it's not because I am bringing it about, it's because that is apparently my agreement with the universe. My niece says that I am the queen of reinventing herself. And she's right, but I don't mean to be. And I tend to just think everybody else is doing it too. Like it's completely normal, right? You all
Yeah.
reinvent yourselves every couple of days, right? Everybody does, right? And
No.
so
I'm
if I
comfortable.
so I feel like I have to say, like, if I'm coming off like you're not perfect, you need to change. I borrowed one of your selenites, by the way. I didn't tell you that. I
Ooh, like
grabbed
the hard
grabbed your
one.
selenite because I'm like, I need some grounding over here. I am in no way ever suggesting that anybody is not perfect exactly as they are. And even you said, I think I just need to be comfortable for a while. And I'm like, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
be okay with that. I need because I am because it is my vibration, it is my
Mm-hmm.
energy. Aside from the fact that I have Virgo in 5 houses, it's also my vibration and my energy. And so it's tough. It is. I don't settle down very
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't.
Wow.
So yeah, we discussed talking about we're not ready to bring the ET out. He did come out last night. He it you know
Yeah.
goes by the name Gerard.
Mm-hmm.
Did identify as a very benevolent being that is all about compassion. And what I like about him, it They don't have a gender. What I like about it is he just gives you the first step
Mhm.
when because we've done 3 Eric and I have done 3 sessions together. Well, no, we've actually done 2 sessions together. One was an accident. One is when he identified himself. And so we're on the phone, and Eric has like a series of questions that he asks me that he asks Gerard through me. And that leads me to my rough week because you and I were having rough weeks. Just our
Mhm.
days were different. Our
Yeah.
days were the ones that alternated.
Yeah.
So he came out the 30th. The 30th was the day that I asked my husband to help me with my Akashic records. So you certified my husband, you certified me, and I said I really want to open my Akashic records, but and get in there and like dig around.
Yeah.
When I do, for me, it's like sitting in a warm bath, and I
Mhm.
just kind of lose my concentration without somebody guiding me. And then I just sit in there until I'm pruny, and then I get out and I have nothing. Nothing but relaxation, right? And so I got no answers, I got no nothing. And I can't for whatever reason, I can't drive that truck. It's just I
Hmm.
can't get it there. So I asked Eric if I gave him a few questions, if he would sit on the phone with me and ask those questions and then write down the answers and bring
Yeah.
it back. And so we are in the middle of doing that. Actually, we're just at the end. And my voice changed, the energy changed, and my husband is God bless that man because he's like, "Oh, we have a new friend. This is so great." And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not sure great is how I'm feeling about that right now. And he's just like, whoa, we can't wait to do this. And I'm like, I don't ever want to do this again, because the change is exhausting.
Mhm.
And that
Yes.
is a whole new exhausting thing. So, I sat with it for a little bit. We decided to do it the next night, and so on the phone, he answered and I actually videotaped it and
Mhm.
then sent it, like, on unlisted links to you and, to
Yeah,
my
exactly. Mhm.
witnesses, and, great stuff, honestly. Eric and I decided to do it again on the 7th. Now, on May 7th was my mother's 84th birthday, but 84th, 82nd birthday, but she's no longer with us, and, my mother passed away 11 years ago. So, um, I every year go buy a couple lottery tickets for my mom, for her birthday because my mother never missed a lottery drawing ever in the entire time of the history of the lottery. And if
Hmm.
they added a new game, she bought a new ticket. So what started out as like $5 a week turned into like $25 a week by the time that she passed away. It was my mom's dream to win the lottery.
Yeah.
And so I bought a lottery ticket, and I follow a lot of readers on YouTube, and I just kinda listen to them for fun, but I also, like, I can confirm a lot of the stuff that they give, and there's a whole lot around you're gonna be getting, like, this, a large amount of money and blah, 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 and I was like, "Mom, you're gonna get your lottery win. I'm gonna go get a lottery ticket for you," you know? So on May 7th, just not even 5 days ago, I my husband and I opened up the, with Gerard, did some questions, but something happened. And this is why I called you Tuesday night, if you
Mhm.
remember.
Yes, I do.
So um, Eric asked a question that I asked, and that is, are we going to go public with this? Like, am I going to do public showings like this? Because that mortifies me, terrifies me.
I hope so. I hope you
Oh
do.
god, yeah, you're like, "We need to do this," and I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all aren't doing this, I'm doing this." Like, that's where I am, right? And I think one of my biggest fears is being called a fraud, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, he's like, "Not yet." Indira has a lot of trust issues, and we need to work through those. And Eric said, "Well, how do you want her to do that? What do we need to do?" And he said, "Well, when she goes for he calls it the brain rewiring, is EMDR. It's the
Mhm.
same thing. He doesn't use the phrase EMDR. He
Yeah.
says when she goes for her weekly brain rewiring, like it's like I'm getting plugged into a machine or something. It's so funny to me. He's like, when she goes for that, focus on a fear that has been like implanted, and
Mhm.
it's,
Mhm.
it's around family, and I was like, oh, okay. He says, okay, that's great. And about that moment, I remember feeling like this big hand move through my abdomen. I'm not trying to freak anybody out here. It was an energetic hand.
Mhm.
But it was like a golden hand, and it was moving through. Now, I had a total hysterectomy in 2016, 2017. I can't even remember what year I did that, but it's like moving through, but I I I likened it to what happens if you close up a big house with a bunch of furniture for like 50 years and you put those furniture covers over it. And if you were to lift those covers off and all of the dust and the cobwebs start moving, that's what it felt like all this old dust and cobweb moving up mixed with really old blood. Weirdly enough, that's what it was like.
Mhm.
And when that finished, Eric's like, okay, babe, I'm gonna go get a shower. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna do that. And I'll call you back later. And I'm just there. And so I call you and I'm like, we just did a session with Gerard and I feel very vulnerable. Do you
Mhm.
just have some time to sit with me? And you're like,
Mhm.
yeah. And so we chatted. We chatted about business
Yeah.
stuff. We
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
chatted.
Yeah.
I got home that night, talked to Eric again, and I had all this anxiety and I had all this stuff pulled up.
Mhm.
And um And I thought, well, I'll just check the lottery numbers. Mom probably won. And and you and I laughed really hard about this because I checked the lottery numbers and I lost, which is not abnormal for anyone.
It's like how
Like
like everybody else on this planet except for one person maybe.
exactly. And yet that thing caused me to collapse into a screaming, sobbing, like violent screaming and sobbing experience for 4 hours straight.
Wow.
This started sometime around 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock, and it lasted till 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And I had my back door open because, I live on the top floor of an apartment. I had one of my windows open. I would move from my bedroom to the living room floor to my sofa, back and forth. My roommate was not home. Thank God for her. There, she did not have to experience this. And it was like violent sobs. And I'm screaming, I hate you, universe. I hate you, God. Go to hell. Like I'm screaming all of this really hardcore stuff, including you betrayed me.
Mhm.
Like all of this. And there's a part of me that is thinking, who is talking right
Yeah.
now? Is that my mom? Like, am I, like, because I learned a few years ago that our parents do inadvertently plant their seeds inside of us, like their seeds of like self-loathing, self-hate. My mother had super bad body dysmorphia. Um, she had a lot of self-hatred, self-loathing. I learned that had been planted. That's a whole other story for a whole other day.
Sure.
But I'm like, so is this my mom's? And I could not stop the tears, and I was crying so hard. My sinuses were so full, my throat was so full that I would like stop breathing for a little
Wow.
bit until I could like calm everything down and take a couple breaths, and I couldn't control it. I mean, it was just spilling out of me for hours, and I am screaming, "I hate you. Go to hell. Leave me alone. I don't believe in you. You're a liar." This is all like I'm saying all this to like God, spirit, the universe. It's all the same thing to me, right? And finally, about 3 o'clock, I fell asleep. I was exhausted, I
Mm.
think,
Mhm.
and I got up at 5:45 and I went to work. There
Wow.
is There's no amount of ice in this world that could have um, gotten the swelling down in my face
Mhm.
from all of those tears. I walked in to work and I didn't care. I knew I had 6 hours of meetings that day, one of which I had to lead. That was my first one. The
Mhm.
second one was a full staff meeting. The third one was a really important meeting that I just needed to be at. So um, I showed up and people are like, "Oh, you okay?" And I'd be like, "Nope, and please don't talk to me." The people that know me and love me know, and I've told them this several times. If you see me upset, ask me if I want a hug, and if I say no, it's because I know I'm not gonna be able to stop crying.
Mhm. Mhm.
And please don't take it personally. Please do not take it, and I will always follow up with, "Thank you for the hug. Can I have it now?" Like, "Thank you for the hug
Yeah.
offer. Can I have it
Yeah.
now?" But if I am in a certain vulnerable place and you try to hug me, I'm not gonna stop crying.
Oh,
So, even my boss walked up to me and was like, "Do you need a hug?" And I was like, "Maybe later, thanks." I go into a meeting, and the first thing that I do is I say, "God and I are not on speaking terms. Who wants to open in prayer?" Just like that.
good
And
one.
I have 3 people that I love these people. One is a therapist. One is, I believe she's a chemical or an environmental engineer, and one is, for all intents and purposes, she's a minister, right? She's, going through the training.
Mhm.
And the therapist is like, "We're here for you. Let us know how we can support you." The minister's like, "We're praying for you." And the engineer, she's like, "Just feel the suffering." And I was like, "That's the one I need right there. Thank you for the
Yeah.
prayers, holding space." But what Kathy just said, and if Kathy's listening to this, shout out to you, darling. She's just like, "Go ahead and feel the suffering, honey. Just suffer, suffer, suffer." Like, "I will." I was triggered by everything that day, and I didn't
Yeah.
even know what had happened. I honest to God did not know what happened, and I was exhausted by the end of the day. I went through all my meetings, and people did look at me all day long like, "Are you gonna be okay? You know what? I'm
Mhm.
here. I'm second air. I'm fine." And so I get home that night. I have to do a couple things, but I ended up just laying with doing legs up the wall, for this
Mhm. Mhm.
piece, and I just did this, and I just laid there for, like, an hour and just got away from the world. On Friday, I went to therapy and to do EMDR, and we always check in, and I told her what happened. And my brilliant, brilliant therapist, which I did not even pick up on this, picked up on betrayal. "You betrayed me, God.
Wow.
You betrayed me." And I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Yeah, let's just go with that." Now, in between there's a whole bunch of personal stuff. Like, I started journaling about it. I started uncovering stuff, but it legitimately was me feeling betrayed by the universe.
Mhm.
And it is deeply connected to my feeling of safety, my ability to trust the universe, my how much I earn, my financial safety, and my love relationships. It's
Mm.
all intertwined, which you and I just talked about. One of the
Yeah.
things that
Uh-huh.
Gerard said, so we're gonna need to visit that in a second.
Yes. Mhm.
And so I did a lot of work around it. And then Saturday afternoon, I started to work on a presentation I'm doing next Saturday here in Kansas City, and I realized that I won the lottery that day because it was my mom's birthday, and it was her gift to me on her birthday to remove all of what is not mine to carry anymore.
Mhm.
These were
Mhm.
some of it was hers and some of it was
Sure.
mine,
Mhm.
but it had been planted. These were and because the vision that I had when I did EMDR, the memory that I had, I would have never thought that is what it was about
Hmm.
in a million years. So I just, like, kind of trust the process. But it was my mother's greatest gift to me to to take back and accept responsibility for the stuff that she inadvertently planted in me through her own wounds, her own
Wow.
fears. And my mother
Wow.
was not an abusive woman at all, at all, at all. She didn't. Oh, she didn't accept responsibility for a lot of stuff, but she was not abusive by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
Um, uh, she abandoned sometimes, but yeah. So, I'm with you on I just want everything to settle down, and yet, after your reading with Gerard yesterday
Mhm.
and all of that, I don't think either one of us are gonna settle down, and the planets aren't gonna let us all settle down
That's what
because
he
this
said because I said, "When is it going to end?" He's like, literally, like, don't ask me that question because I'm not going to like the answer. I'm like, okay, whatever. But I felt like what I was asking you in the reading is like, give me a tool to help me get through those things. And you know what, to everybody else out there, if you are having a week where you feel like everything, the whole universe
conspiring
conspiring,
against each
thank you, thanks you, against you, it's, oh my gosh, like, go ahead and scream, go out in nature and hug a tree and, practice self-care.
even
It's,
that 4 hours of wailing,
yeah,
that was the best self-care I ever gave myself. And it eventually stopped. I eventually wore out like a toddler.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
and some of your self-care, because you and I both have engaged. So one of my self-care, well, 2 of them. One is I went and I laid on the earth underneath a tree.
Oh.
That was one of them that was really big for me to allow, and that's something that shamans do quite a bit. We allow the energy of the tree and the earth to transmute
Mm-hmm.
those lower vibrations. Another
Mm-hmm.
one that I did, that was when I was talking to you on the phone Friday night. I was in the tub. I was in the
Mm-hmm.
bathtub in an Epsom salts bath. Those are 2 things of self-care.
Yeah.
You brought up the one where you're like laying on the floor with crystals all over you, listening to meditation music. I do that. And I also do that at night. I told you that yesterday.
Yeah.
I have found Reiki healers on Instagram that I
Mm-hmm.
really resonate with. And
Mm-hmm.
I will just leave it on all night long next to my bed. I say yes, they ask for
Sure.
consent, and you
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
and then I literally lay there and they run through 30-second Instagram reels for like 5, 6, 7 hours
Wow.
on my phone, and I just accept their Reiki all night long.
That's a good one.
Yeah. What
That's a
else
good
do you
one.
do? What are some other self-cares you do? You go
Actually,
swimming.
yeah. I mean, what I do sometimes, and it's very similar to yours. I have an app on my phone. It's called Insight Timer.
Mhm,
And so I put it on meditation music or sleep music.
mhm.
And I put my headphones in and I'm out like a light. The last 3 nights I slept so well. I don't even remember. I mean, I wake up in the morning, we're still with the headphones in, you know? And I mean, of course, the recording has ended, but I pick the ones that have like an hour and a half or 90 minutes,
Mhm.
and it doesn't even take 10 minutes and
And
I'm
you're
out.
out. That's incredible. I have an app that I do, and, it is called, let me see. Hold on a second. Heck, I don't even know what it's called. What is this app? Um, I don't know. It's like a gratitude app. Yeah, it's like a gratitude app. Um, I do that because I know that part of my self-care is getting, um, out of my own way and
Mm-hmm.
expressing gratitude, because gratitude brings more, it is, that's that vibration. And when I am low, I cannot I can't even force myself to find something to be grateful for. And personally, for me, it does not work for me to sit down and try to write 3 things I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Like chocolate, um, air, my husband.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, and this app is like, talk about your favorite thing about nature and why you're grateful for it.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, and it's just real quick. It takes me, I don't know. I think the longest one I ever did, I had to do a letter. And there was like a letter writing one for like 11 days. So I did 11 days of like writing a letter to someone as to why I'm grateful for them. But it was very specific stuff. It was like, grateful for someone who gave you assistance, grateful for someone who mentored you, but gratitude. And I never, like, I hate the gratitude practice. I don't want to be grateful. Just give me what I want.
Exactly. Why do I have to go through so many loops? Just give it to me.
Just give it to me. I don't want to have to be the gratitude. Like, what the heck? And but it's what I have to do to raise my vibration and to change
Yeah.
my brain.
I guess
So
there's no shortcut.
no, there's no
You
shortcut.
have to do the work.
Yeah,
And that's
you do.
hard sometimes. It is hard.
Mhm.
And that's why we said this episode is part 1 of rewriting your story because we didn't even scratch the surface.
We didn't. I
We're
do
not
want to
even
share.
close.
Yeah, I'm gonna share the story of what
Uh-huh.
happened in EMDR as
Yeah.
a something to plant the seed, right?
Hmm.
So I've been a practicing shaman for what year is it?
It's
um,
2024.
about 20 years. I've been a practicing shaman, and it is a practice. It's just like I am a practicing yogi. Yep, I'm certified to train,
Hmm.
to teach. Actually, I'm certified to teach, not train. Um, I will be practicing yogi for the rest of my life. I will be practicing shaman for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Um, Even though I may teach a little bit about it. In shamanism, we do something called child retrievals. And it is when you've experienced a great amount of trauma and there is no one in that scene that is rescuing the baby, the child, you.
Hmm.
And so someone's got to go in and rescue the baby so you and your inner child are not reliving that scene,
Interesting. Hmm.
that
Hmm.
situation. This particular event that I remembered was not really that traumatic. It wasn't, but it was timeline shifting for me. So
Hmm.
this is when we talk about rewriting our story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was timeline shifting for me. So what happened is I remembered that my mom and my sister were having a big fight. My dad had just moved out of the house. I was maybe 4 or 5. Dad had moved out of the house, and my mother is beside herself because we don't have his income to pay the bills and we're going to have to move. And my sister is like, absolutely not. This is where my friends are. I will get a job. I will do what I have to do to help us. Maybe if you stopped wasting money on things, we could, we'd make it. But we are not leaving this house. We're not doing it.
Hmm.
And you're not bringing a man in because you're a terrible judge of men. And in that moment, I recognized as I'm watching it because I'm like seeing myself. It's when you do EMDR, you're kind of like watching from a distance what's happening. But I'm looking at me underneath our pool table in the basement, kind of buffering the yelling and playing. But I was a weird child. I still remembered my divinity. I knew my connection to God. I knew who Jesus was from a
Hmm.
very young age, and not the Christian version of Jesus, but like the ascended master version of Jesus. I knew that he was the example, not the exception. That I just knew that. And I would leave my body and go out into the cosmos and hang out among the stars because that was comfortable and familiar to me. As a small child, I totally remember doing those things. I would have full-on conversations with God while I took baths. So, like, I still have conversations with people when I'm in the
Hmm.
bathtub. Did it with Bettina, did it with God when I was a kid. So 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 anyway, but what I realized in that moment when I went to comfort my sister and then I went to comfort my mother, and my sister became very afraid because we can't let another man in this house that's going to be violent. Mom's a terrible choice. She chooses terrible men. We cannot bring another violent man in this house. We've got to be safe. We've got to be okay. Maybe if we just eat less, maybe if we just, she was like
Yeah.
trying to figure it all out. And she's sobbing and she's scared, and so I'm like comforting her. It's going to be okay, sissy. It's going to be okay. And then I go upstairs and I realize my mom is having the same fears. And I'm comforting my mom. I'm like 4 or 5, right? And that is the moment I started to forget my divinity and started to realize that life is scary.
Oh.
Neither of those things are true. Life isn't scary. And I didn't forget my divinity. But in that moment that the chasm happened,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
and I recognize as I'm watching all this play out, I'm like, oh, I know what's about to happen. Oh my God. So I grabbed little me out from under the pool table. You stop. So in shamanism, you stop the scene and you rescue that little version of you. And there are a lot of steps to this, but I'm telling you guys, anybody is really capable of doing it. But if you don't feel capable of doing it, please go see a shamanic practitioner. I have a great one in Kansas City. It takes a few months to get in to see her, but she can do this work. But anyway, I stopped the scene. I grabbed little me and I said, "Hey, sweetheart." I said, "Do I look familiar to you?" She's like, "You do. You're a big me." She was like just the cutest thing. And I said, "So do you know how you like have those conversations with God when you're in the bathtub?" She's like, "Yep." Like, you know how you love to go out into the ethers, out into space and talk to the stars? And she's like, "Yep, I do." And I'm like, "Don't ever lose this. Don't lose this. This is your divinity. I want you to hold on to it as tightly as you hold on to Big Bird." Because I had a giant Big Bird that I carried around all the time. "Hold on to it as tightly as you hold on to Big Bird." And she's like, "Okay, okay." And I said, "And do you see what's going on here with mommy and sissy?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, this isn't yours to take on. This isn't yours. And I said, "So, what I want you to do, you know how grandma takes us to the theater?" And my grandmother always took me to the theater. It was our thing to do. There was a little tiny playhouse in her little tiny town in Kansas that we would go sit at. And I said, "You know how grandma always takes us to the theater?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "And you know how she told us not to go on the stage, and become a part of the play, but instead sit in the audience and allow what they do to move us, not jump in and try to change what's happening." So we allow whatever's happening on the stage to happen. And if it gives us an emotional reaction, we have it, but we don't have to dive in, right? Because the big person words is, we had no boundaries in my house, in my family.
Mhm.
There no the between my mother, my sister, and I, no one had a single boundary between us all. We were just a big permeable membrane of messiness. And I said, "So I want you to, anytime you start to see mommy sissy do this, you see mommy daddy do this, you see daddy Phyllis do this, you see all these people in your family. And as you get older, you watch friends do this and your husbands and whatever. I just want you to pretend like you're sitting in the audience and just let it happen. You don't have to dive in and save anybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to comfort anybody. And just let it happen." And she's like, "Okay, that's easy." And I was like, "It is." And I said, "And here's what I want you to do. I want you to just leave the room right now. I want you to go outside and play." She's like, "Okay." And gone she was. And they continued their situation. But me, as the youngest child in the house, my sister was like probably 14, 15. I was 4 or 5. And my mother was the adult in the room. So she's like in her 30s now. Um, sh- I removed me from being their caregivers. And I removed me from being in this permeable membrane between this stuff that my mom and my sister had to work out, because none of it had anything to do with me. That was between the two of them. And as soon as I did that, I began to rewrite my story, because
Wow.
it doesn't change anything that happened to me. It changes the energy of every relationship I had, however, into, I now have very firm boundaries. And so, case in point, my beloved husband called me last night, and I was in the middle of telling him something that was really upsetting to me, and that I was very sad about. I was grieving, and I knew he wasn't listening. And then I was about halfway through my story, and he says, "Babe, I got to go for a minute. I'll call you right back." And I was like, "I'm good." And I wasn't angry. It was, if you can't, and I get that he's in prison, and I love everyone, all of my friends who constantly give him so much grace, and I give him the same grace, but I also know his agreements with me. And his agreements with me are, do not give me excuses to not show up as the best husband I can be. Don't ever
Mhm.
do that to me. And you know this, Bettina, you know
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
He has
yeah,
very high
yeah.
expectations for his behavior.
Yes, yes.
And so anyway, um, I, uh, when I talked to him again, I said, "Here's the thing. I am now learning my value.
Mhm.
If you're not interested in what I have to say because you're tired or you have the bandwidth to hear what I have to say or because you're distracted or whatever, you can't hear what I have to say. It's not so much interested. It's just you can't hear what I have to say.
Yeah,
Then I'm
exactly.
not going to talk
Mhm.
because I value myself." And as Brené Brown tells us when we to be good story stewards, only tell people who deserve to hear your story your story. If they don't deserve to hear your story, don't tell them.
Interesting.
And I said, in that moment, because your mind was in 14 different places trying to figure out who to give your French fries to, taking the trash out, like all this stuff.
Yeah. Mhm.
It You weren't into my story, and I didn't
Mhm.
need to waste my breath telling you.
Exactly.
And he's
Exactly.
like, and the thing is, he's like, I so get that. He's like, I so get that. And
Oh,
he's like, and he's like, you're the only person in the world that actually like is present when I speak. And he's like, and everybody else is like all over the place. And I said, that's because your story is valuable to me. But if
mhm.
mine isn't valuable to you in that moment, I'm not going to waste my breath. I'm going to go
Yeah.
find something else to do with my time.
Mhm.
No
Mhm.
disrespect. I still love you. I'm not angry at you. I just am not going to do that. And I was
Exactly.
like, 2 days ago, I'd have gotten mad and pouted. So in rewriting my story
Mhm.
around my value and my worth and my boundaries and what I'll accept and what I won't, I'm already explaining to my husband in ways that I couldn't have explained it 2 days ago. This is why I just said, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it
Yeah.
some other time.
So I guess rewriting your story is with everything else that we talked about in other episodes. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a grand change. You can start with small things.
Mhm,
Every small change contributes to your healing journey.
mhm.
Every little
Yeah.
bit counts.
That song, "I Call My Power Back to Me,"
Hmm.
if you haven't done that, get on YouTube. I wanna do a huge shout out to that woman for that. That was an amazing, thing. "I Call My Power Back to Me." That is what you do when you start
Hmm.
to set those boundaries now. That's what you do
Yeah.
when you go in and you recognize patterns that have been going on since you were 4 or 5 years old, and you say, you know what, let's not do that for the rest of our life. And it seriously has changed everything in my brain. I'm really tired today
Yeah.
because my brain is rewiring again and my energy is rewiring and my nervous system, my central nervous system is starting to rest and I'm exhausted.
Hmm.
Um, and yet the change is going to continue to come this week. I just know it is.
I'll just hang in there with being me being the can.
I'm in the can with you. Spirit drives this. Spirit drives this honeymoon car.
Oh, geez. Oh, but guys, we love you and thanks for
Yeah.
listening to our story and all the things that go on with us. And we just
Tell us
want
yours.
to
Tell us your story, right?
exactly,
Write to
exactly.
us.
We all, yeah,
Brian said something yesterday. He said, when you guys told us that you're like really full and don't reach out to us, I'm like, oh, did we say that? And we probably did. We may have just, but I don't think we meant it. I think we were just,
yeah,
both of us
yeah.
were. So no, we do want to hear your
Yes, we
stories.
do.
We
We do.
do want to hear that like a Friday message resonates. We do want to hear that you're going through the same thing.
Hmm.
We This is community.
This is
Please
community, correct?
Please do email us. Please do message us. Please do.
Yes,
Please comment on the YouTube link, like, subscribe, ring that bell, all the things.
all of things. But
Yeah,
we will
we've got
continue this conversation though
we will.
with more in-depth information or insight. And yeah,
Yeah, and we love you.
we love you.
Yeah, thanks for being here
Have
and
a
check
good
out our
week,
Friday message.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Yeah.